Radio.
6 Music.
You are now entering a parallel universe. And wipe your feet on the way in.
Marc Riley, BBC 6 Music.
And colour him father. I'm Marc Riley in Salford, whilst in, Beverley, East Yorkshire, we've got Rob Hughes. What time is it over there at the moment, Bob?
Are we still doing this?
Yeah.
Let me check the clock. It's about 25 to 9, Mark.
In the morning?
In the evening.
Oh, wow. Okay, we got that over and done with. So we're in the parallel universe, Bob, anyway. So where are we exactly?
Well, we're looking at the New Musical Express, 21st of June, 1969.
Great.
Linda Martell, we just said, one of the great forgotten figures of country music.
Hang on a minute. You say she's one of the great forgotten figures of country music. I've never heard of her in the first place. So I've not forgotten about her. I've just never heard of her.
Well, maybe undiscovered was a better word then in that case.
For me, personally, but I liked it.
Yeah, brilliant that. And she was also like the first black woman to appear on the Grand Ole Opry. So she's like a really major figure. She made one album and then essentially disappeared.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So NME, June 1969. American notes. Pretty well all the dates have now been set for the Blind Faith Tour, including a scheduled appearance at Madison Square Garden in July, the day after they make their US debut at the Blind Faith Festival in Newport. Meantime, we can now expect an August release on their first album, for which the artwork is now in the processing stage. This didn't last long at all, did it? This was really... was it doomed to fail, do you think?
Well, it's a component parts is what people normally expect for these things to take off, isn't it? I mean, I don't know anything about them, really. I do know that Mark Radcliffe and we were considering having a band called Blind Drunk at one point in time, which was a tribute to them, even though we didn't really know too much about them in the first place. But to play Madison Square Garden, they must have been quite big.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was a super group, wasn't
it?
But, of course, you've got Eric Clapton there and Ginger Baker, who had their fallouts, didn't they, in Cream previously.
Yep.
Elsewhere, it says that the Fillmore East is staying open through warm days for the first time. Acts to appear at the Fillmore includes Crosby, Stills and Nash, whose first album released this week is an absolute blockbuster. And Jimmy Webb will make his performing debut both as singer and piano organ soloist at the Desert Inn, Las Vegas. Jimmy will guest star with Connie Stevens for 3 weeks. 22-year-old Webb will sing and perform his own songs, including such hits as Up, Up and Away, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, MacArthur Park, Wichita Lineman, Galveston, and Where's the Playground, Susie. This is staggering to think that he'd done all that by the age of 22.
It's mind-blowing, and I was lucky enough to meet him when he played the Bridgewater Hall around about 5 months ago, something like that. And they interviewed him previously, and that went really well, and he was so great, but to meet him was just, it felt like a real honour.
Oh, absolutely. I was lucky enough to interview him as well. He's one of the great interviewees, isn't he? He's just fantastic.
Yeah, he's game for a laugh. Doesn't take himself dead seriously, but he'd achieved all that by 22. Go figure.
Yeah, frightening. It really is. On page 2, some Rolling Stones news. Mick Jagger, this is with Richard Green. Mick Jagger holding court is quite an experience, as I discovered last week. His answers are often vague or cynical, but the majority are serious. He adopts an air of nonchalance and gives the impression of rather being elsewhere. One perfect example of this was the reply to my question, what are you doing to prepare for the Ned Kelly role? Not enough, he says. I'm spending all my time talking to the music press and messing about.
Well, that will be bore out by the actual performance in, pardon the pun, in the film. It's not very good, that film, is it?
No, it's not.
Funny enough, performances, but, that is.
Well, yeah, that is great. He leaned back in a chair, drinking apple juice, having already rejected one glass, as he claimed there was soap in it. He occasionally took a grape from the huge bowl on the large oval desk, which dominates the boardroom, and played the Edwin Hawkins Singers album, followed by the 3-Day Night LP. Talking about albums, apparently it's 2 Rolling Stones albums on the horizon. And Let It Bleed, I'm guessing, is the one that made it. This was later in 69, wasn't it?
Okay.
It goes on to say how the Rock and Roll Circus film, which had never been seen up to this point, will probably be shown in the autumn to coincide with the album. He says it'll blow your mind. TV is just so appallingly bad. This is just what it needs. This stayed on the shelf for decades, didn't it?
That, again, is ironic, isn't it? Because they thought it was shocking and didn't let it see light of day for decades.
It's a great film. It really is. Didn't come out, was it about 98, 99 maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
And in the meantime, they've got a new member. Mick Taylor was only 14 and a year away from leaving school when the Stones had the first hit. Now he's 20. He's never actually seen the Stones close up on stage. But it seems the Stones stage policy is about to change. According to Mick, the June-July open-air concerts are the first steps towards a return to extensive stage appearances in September. That was one of the first things Mick told me, said the sandy-haired New Stone on Thursday last. If they were not going to go do gigs, there would not have been much need for a guitarist in the first place, which makes sense.
Right.
You can't argue, though, just how important Mick Taylor was, because they've not been the same since, and never quite the same before Mick Taylor. He gave them an extra something, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's a virtuoso, but I mean, you were talking about Ry Cooder at the same time, weren't they?
Yeah,
who might have been
right.
joining. But again, you know, if you look at those recent Rolling Stones documentaries, there was, I think, 4 of them. I watched one of them. But the way that Ronnie Wood's writing credits get treated within the band is a bit of an eye-opener. So it is obviously, you've got to consider it to be a privilege to join the Rolling Stones and let them get away with, you know, certain aspects of creative credits, put it that way. But you are joining one of the biggest rock and roll bands in the world, so fair enough, probably.
Of course you are, absolutely. And I know you just played a bit. John and Yoko strike back here, talking about getting involved in the peace process. John says, we're only at the beginning of selling our peace product, and I hope it's beginning to work. Yoko and I can only go on the reactions we get from people in the street when we're going down the street. Most people always say hello and good luck. The way I see it is, even if they don't get the gist of us, or why are those people hammering in nails or staying in bed, they know we're in favour of peace and they know what we stand for. This is only the start of the campaign, and they'll soon all know our message and what we're trying to say. And goes on to say how easy it is for armchair critics to have a go at them, which there were plenty at this time, weren't there?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, it was a good thing they were trying to do patently. I mean, obviously, but still, you know, disregarding all of that, I can't help but think of the Ruttles and Ron Nasty and Chastity sitting in a bath for peace.
Try not to laugh, I think, Chastity. Anyway, you've just been there, but we're going to go to singles, aren't we, I think?
We are. We're going to go to the Kinks and Victoria.
We are.
Excellent. You would have to say that Mark Smith had impeccable choice in taste in music, wouldn't you? Because obviously the Fall did a cover version of the Kinks' Victoria, which, you know, you forget how great, well, I did, forget how great it is. You think, oh yeah, that's a good song. It's just so good, isn't it? What a writer.
Yeah, just a level of that. In fact, they make this point in the singles page on page 6 here. The fact that Ray Davies seems to improve with each release, but their popularity seems to diminish accordingly. Maybe their style is falling from favour. If that's the case, then this record won't stop the trend. From the quality and production, it deserves to be a hit, but it can't be too hopeful. And that seemed to be the way it was, wasn't it, for them in the late 60s, early 70s particularly, weirdly.
Well, they struggled in America as well, didn't they? Because they got, like, kicked out of America and stuff, which wouldn't have helped them, obviously, internationally. But if you look at it from my point of view, you've got Lennon and McCartney and then Ray Davies around about that time. So
Definitely.
Yeah, amazing.
And it was just him as well, of course. So look at the NME here, 21st of June, 1969. News on the centre pages. Britain may have its first underground TV pop series in the autumn. The series, which would be called Groove, depends on the success of a pilot show to be filmed by London Weekend Television in July. Idea for the series came from Cephas Howard, a member of the Temperance Seven and a set designer with London Weekend. Howard will produce the pilot, for which Blodwyn Pig has already been approached to perform. A spokesman for London Weekend said at this stage, the series was still tentative. So this was a good idea, I feel. So I did a bit of homework here, Mark.
Right.
A pilot was filmed on the 15th of July, 1969, with Yes doing a Stephen Sondheim tune. But beyond that, I can't find anything else about this. I mean, the idea of doing an underground TV show, I think this is a few years before Whistle Test, at least.
Yeah.
At least on the right track.
Yeah, but that's Yes doing Stephen Sondheim sounds like my worst night in ever.
Also in the news, Beatles John Lennon and Paul McCartney have been invited to a rare public screening of the controversial Magical Mystery Tour in London in July. Was it controversial?
I don't remember it, but then again, I was only a toddler at the time.
Oh. The film will be screened at 10 p.m. as part of a festival at Goldsmith College in New Cross. Magical Mystery Tour storyteller Ivor Cutler will take part in an open forum discussion later with actor David Hemmings and film director Clive Donner. David Hemmings had this sort of crossover, didn't he, between acting and the musical world, very much involved in the world of pop and rock in various ways.
Yeah. He filmed Bowie's. I mean, I know he always come back to Bowie, but he filmed the 3 nights at Earl's Court for the stage tour, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. We still haven't been seen in their entirety. In other Beatles-related news, with the ballad of John and Yoko and Get Back in the NME chart, a third Beatle-made single is to be released in July. It's the John Lennon Yoko Ono produced "Give Peace a Chance," recorded several weeks ago by the now titled Plastic Ono Band in a Toronto hotel room. More than 40 people crammed into the room for the session, including Timothy Leary, a rabbi, and Tom Smothers of the Smothers Brothers. The record is a magnificent production with a gospel feel. Apple describe it as both a hypnotic chant and a fantastic song to turn the world around. The Beatles are also interested in filming an adaptation of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. No director or producer has been appointed, and there is no starting date. Talk about no news.
Yeah, apart from that.
And this too, the songwriting talents of Fleetwood Mac may be signed to the Beatles' Apple publishing offshoot if negotiations can be finalised. John Lennon said this week that he would be interested in having them join the company. However, the deal will be on a composing basis only. Mac manager Clifford Davis told the NME that discussions had already taken place with Apple MD Neil Aspinall, but that several very big offers have been received and they're all being considered. This is a lot of Beatle news, considering, they're just on the verge of splitting up here.
Well, there was a lot of mad things going on with Apple and all that stuff, wasn't there? And of course, the Beatles were the biggest news on the planet, and so I suppose they're just scratching around trying to get some headlines and column inches.
Yeah, absolutely. And just briefly, Smokey Robinson interviewed by Richie York here. Knowing that Smokey is one of the 5 vice presidents of Tamla Motown, I expected him to be a bustling businessman, a bit loud as a talker and full of overconfident opinions. How wrong I was. I found him rather shy, soft-spoken and most polite. He answered my questions with good humour. I mention this because he's asked, do you find the competition in songwriting worries you? And he says, not in the slightest. There was a time in music about 30 years ago when if you weren't Hoagie Carmichael or George Gershwin, nobody would listen to you. Now, any kid can write a song. If he has anything good to say concerning what life's about, he can quickly become world famous. That's a good thing. So that's a good point, isn't it? You had all these people who thought, I can do that, inspired perhaps by Ray Davies or Lennon McCartney, and thought, I'm going to have a go. Yeah,
and he took it to the next level when people could start recording in their home bedrooms, and it takes it to that level where anybody can sit down and actually record themselves doing it, never mind just write it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to go to the charts out there. Creedence with One of Many.
Okay, this is Born on the Bayou. Creedence Clearwater Revival, Born on the Bayou. Mark Riley here, Bob Hughes over in East Yorkshire.
Yeah, look at the NME here, 12th of June 1969. These bands are on the road this week. Monty Babson, Toby Twirl, Pink Cheeks. Never heard of any of those.
Nope.
The Beach Boys and Marmalade playing at Finsbury Park, Astoria. Pink Floyd at the Royal Albert Hall. Led Zeppelin, Liverpool Scene and Bloodwind Pig at Portsmouth Guildhall. Wow, there's a night. 10 years after, Chicken Shack, Savoy Brown, Fleetwood Mac, Led Zeppelin, The Nice, John Mayall and Colosseum at the Bath Festival of Folk and Blues concert. Obviously, that turned out to be seismic, didn't it? Such an important part of British rock.
Legendary, yeah.
Gaffold at Great Yarmouth ABC. Bill Haley and the Comets in Cabaret at Stockton Fiesta. Jethro Tull at Leeds City Hall. Got Desmond Dekker and the Aces headline an all-nighter at Hastings Pier Ballroom. Amen Corner and The Who at the Grays Marquee Pavilion in Essex. Deep Purple at Klux Kleek in Hampstead. Fleetwood Mac at Nottingham Rowing Club. And Jimmy Ruffin at the famed Twisted Wheel in Manchester. Good night out. Live reviews. Led Zeppelin at Birmingham Town Hall, reviewed by Richard Green. He says, first album had come out about 5 months prior to this, so it's still a fairly new phenomenon, isn't it? According to the ads, The Only Way to Fly is by Led Zeppelin, he says. On Friday night at Birmingham Town Hall, at the start of a 5-date tour, the group certainly took off all right. The passengers were Bloodwind Pig, the Liverpool Scene and a full house. An almighty wall of sound and a huge crashing of drums signalled the start of the group's act, which eventually overran by quite some time. Jimmy Page wore his guitar at hip level, crouching over it and occasionally walking about like Keith Richard. John Paul Jones fired long bursts of heavy bass lines. Robert Plant stretched, reached out and leaned as he belted out and literally screamed the vocals. Jimmy played partly with a bow to get a weird bouncy effect, and the two have a novel way of singing and playing together. Robert utters a few words, usually gibberish, and Jimmy has to repeat them as nearly as possible on his guitar. It's startling, he says, the way he manages. The last number, How Many More Times, was received wildly. At the end, the audience rose as one and cheered and clapped for several moments. Not even a mention of John Bonham there, Mark.
No, he said something about things crashing, which I would imagine would be Bonham, and it does mention gibberish in relation to Robert Plant, which isn't usually complimentary, is it? But
no, not at all.
But we know
it did take a while, didn't it, for them to be accepted here? They were bigger in the States.
Oh yeah, but also, I mean, I think that probably Robert Plant would describe the lyrics to Stairway to Heaven as gibberish, because he really hates that song just because of the words, as I understand it. So, well, each to their own. Okay, pal, so enjoyed that very much. Thank you.
Me too, mate, absolutely.
And we're going to go out now with Otis Redding and Love Man, aren't we?
We are, yes.
Okay, Bob. All right, we'll do it again on Thursday then.
We shall.
All right, cheers, fella. See ya.
Yeah, right.
Okay, mate. So, Otis Redding now. Just to say, tomorrow night we've got the Burning Hell live in session. Gid is next, and thanks for listening. Ta-ta.
Mark Riley, BBC Six Music.
And shut the door on you.